A deer stood on the shoulder, but its eyes glowed like headlights. I noticed it before I could fully process what I was seeing. My truck's low beams cut weakly through the fog rolling in from the fields, and there, at the edge of the asphalt, a deer stared. Its body was still, taut, and unervingly deliberate, the kind of stance a creature assumes when it's aware of something it knows you can't yet comprehend. The headlights, mine, briefly reflected in the black sheen of its eyes, flickered and twisted into the impossible. Two luminous orbs that burned like miniature car lamps, white and unwavering. I slammed the brakes, the tires whining against the damp pavement, and the truck shuddered to a stop. My pulse spiked. I blinked, thinking perhaps I'd misjudged the angle of the lights, the fog playing tricks. But the deer hadn't moved. Its gaze held mine with a ferocity that felt mechanical, deliberate, as though it were observing the contours of my skull rather than me as a living being. The road was deserted, the kind of narrow, winding country stretch that disappears into blackness after a mile. On either side, the forest pressed close, skeletal branches scraping together, whispering faintly in the wind. The fog thickened, curling around the headlights, muting sound and color, making everything beyond the edge of the beam look like another world. I released the brake, inching forward. The deer didn't flinch. My stomach twisted. I took a breath, trying to steady my racing heart. This wasn't normal. I'd grown up near forests. I knew the deer that roamed these roads, their eyes reflecting the occasional headlamp, never glowing like this. A sharp wind whipped through the trees, rattling loose leaves against the truck, sounding almost like whispered syllables. I told myself it was nothing, cold, wet air. Yet the hairs on my neck rose. Something was off. The smell of wet earth and decaying leaves was thick in the cab, almost choking. I tried to drive past it, hugging the center line. The deer's eyes followed me, unwavering, impossibly bright in the fog. For a moment, the road behind me seemed darker than it should have been, as if the night itself recoiled from the headlights. A snapping sound echoed from the woods, small at first, then louder, closer. Twigs breaking, footsteps? My instincts screamed at me to look in the mirrors, but I kept my eyes on the road. When I glanced in the rear view, the fog had shifted, curling into shapes that mimicked figures. I swore I saw movement, a crouched shape between the trees, vanishing the instant I blinked. My pulse spiked, and I yanked the wheel, tires skidding slightly on the wet asphalt. The deer didn't move, but then, the headlights in its eyes pulsed. A slow, deliberate blink, like it had registered my fear and acknowledged it. My throat went dry. The sound of my own breathing felt loud, invasive. I realized the engine's hum wasn't steady. It faltered, a stutter that echoed through the cab. I glanced at the side mirror again. There, reflected in the wet glass, were more glowing eyes, smaller, scattered. Maybe a dozen, lining the roadside, just beyond the tree line. My brain rejected it. Deer didn't behave like this. Not together, not with eyes that burned. The road bent sharply to the left, and I tried to take it fast, hoping to put distance between myself and whatever this was. That's when I heard it. A low, resonant groan, vibrating through the air, unlike any animal I'd known. It was close now, somewhere between the shoulder and the tree line. I pressed the accelerator, tires spitting wet gravel. The fog swirled thicker, as if alive, curling around the cab, muffling sound, and squeezing the headlights into pale cones. Then I saw it move. A deer, or something shaped like one, stepped onto the road. Its legs bent at odd angles, jointed wrong, head cocked unnaturally. The glowing eyes pierced through me. I jerked the wheel, swerving wide into the shoulder gravel, the tires kicking up mud and rocks. I could hear breathing now. Not mine. Not mechanical. Something wet and low, deep in the fog, punctuated by the crunch of claws or hooves against gravel. I tried to tell myself it was a predator, a bear, maybe coyotes, anything rational. But rationality doesn't survive when eyes burn like headlights in a deer's skull, fixed, alive, and somehow aware of you. I floored the accelerator, praying the truck would carry me past it. My vision narrowed to the silver streak of asphalt ahead. Everything else a smeared wash of fog and trees. Then the deer, or whatever it was, leapt. Not with the light, fluid grace of an animal, but with a calculated precision that made my stomach lurch. The headlights in its eyes flared and dimmed in a staggered rhythm, almost pulsing with intent. I screamed when it crossed in front of me. Not directly, but from the corner of my vision, a dozen more orbs popping up along the roadside like signal lights. They spread. They multiplied, emerging from the fog like sentinels. I could feel them, a pressing awareness that settled over the cab, thick and suffocating, staring. And then, abruptly, they vanished. The fog thinned. The road stretched out empty ahead. Only the moonlight and my own shaking hands remained. I stopped the truck, engine stuttering, trying to convince myself it had all been a hallucination. But when I looked in the side mirror, I saw it. Just one deer now, standing perfectly still on the shoulder. Its eyes were normal, or appeared normal, but my gut told me otherwise. Its head turned slowly to follow me, and I realized the headlights in its eyes weren't just reflected. They were projected. They had been watching me, guiding me, steering me down this stretch of road, through this fog, into this isolation. I drove on, faster now, heart hammering, every tree and shadow a potential predator. And then I caught movement in the periphery. Not the deer, but shadows stretching from the treeline, slender, human-like, rising into the air, impossibly tall. My headlights caught their faces briefly. Empty sockets where eyes should have been, dripping with darkness. I slammed the wheel, veering off into a ditch. Mud coated the windshield. My chest burned. I was alone, no witnesses, no help. But the fog seemed to pulse alive, containing a memory of my terror. By the time I found the next stretch of asphalt, clear and ordinary, I swore I would never look back. I didn't. Not until the next morning, when the sun burned away the mist, leaving only the road slick with dew, the forest silent and mundane, the world restored to ordinary geometry. I told myself it was over. Rational explanations flooded in. Exhaustion, fog-induced hallucination, deer reflecting my headlights. I laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. Then I noticed the tracks. Not hoof prints, too large, too irregular, but impressions in the asphalt, long, deliberate, spaced like something far taller than a man or a deer. And at the edge of the shoulder, crushed into the gravel where I'd swerved, a single perfect imprint of a hoof that wasn't mine. No blood, no body, just the mark. And in my mind, still the memory of eyes that followed, burning like headlights, waiting. I never drive that road at night anymore. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in early, I swear I can see them. Glowing, patient, watching from the shoulder. Not hungry, not angry, just waiting. Because somewhere deep in that forest, something learned to look back. The next exit sign listed a date instead of a destination. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of black glass, edges blurred by a fog that seemed to thicken with every mile. My headlights cut through it in hesitant, trembling arcs, illuminating nothing beyond the pale curve of the asphalt. The radio crackled, a soft, insistent static beneath the hum of the tires. I had been driving for hours, though time had lost its usual weight somewhere past the last rest stop. The sign loomed suddenly in the mist, impossibly bright against the gray. At first, I assumed it was a maintenance error, one of those reflective panels that catches the headlights just so. But as I drew closer, the letters resolved into something unmistakable. March 14th, 2027. No town name, no highway number, just the date. My pulse jumped. I squinted at the sign, unsure if it had shifted as I approached, if the numbers had always been there or if I was imagining it. I slowed, gripping the wheel tighter. The fog wrapped the road like a wet blanket, and the hum of the tires became oppressive, as if the asphalt itself were pressing against the car. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The highway stretched endlessly behind me, featureless, devoid of headlights or taillights. The world outside the fog had disappeared. Turning the radio dial only brought more static. A faint, Low hum threaded through it, like distant voices just out of comprehension. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake the fatigue. I had been alone on this stretch of road for hours, yet the sensation of being watched pricked at the back of my neck. The sign glimmered again through the mist, insistent. Against better judgment, I took the exit. The asphalt narrowed almost immediately, fading from blacktop into a gray, pitted surface that crunched under the tires. My headlights caught glimpses of twisted trees lining the road, branches knotting together like fingers reaching for the sky. The fog seemed to curl around the trunks, thickening, moving, shaping itself into shadows that felt almost human. A sudden gust of wind slammed against the car, rattling the doors. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 3:14. My hands trembled. The date on the sign and the time on the clock aligned too precisely, too deliberately. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence, that my mind was playing tricks. Still, the highway stretched forward in silence, and the fog grew heavier with each passing second. The road wound through a shallow valley, the trees on either side leaning inward, forming a corridor that narrowed with each curve. Headlights caught brief flashes of reflective markers that were wrong. They bore no highway insignia, only numbers that seemed to shift slightly whenever I blinked. 03/14, March 14th, repeated endlessly along the roadside. My stomach sank. I pressed the accelerator, desperate to leave, but the road felt infinite, folding back on itself as if the exit had never existed. I thought I saw movement in the fog, a figure crossing the road, pale and indistinct, like a projection of light. I swerved instinctively, tires skidding over the uneven asphalt, but there was nothing, only the trees and the fog, whispering against the edges of the car. My breath fogged the interior, heart hammering. I needed to stop, to turn around, but every attempt to retrace my path ended the same. The road curling forward into the mist, the date markers repeating, insistent. Then I heard it, a faint tapping at the window. Slow, deliberate. I froze, chest tight. The tapping came again, softer this time, almost shy. I lowered the window a fraction. The fog pressed close, curling around the glass, bringing with it a scent like wet earth and faint iron. The tapping ceased. For a moment, the night was perfectly still, the road a void, my own breath deafening in my ears. And then my phone buzzed. I had not touched it since leaving the last rest area. The screen lit up. March 14th, 2027, 22:31. No name, no app, just the date and time. My hands shook violently. I dropped it onto the passenger seat, glancing at the fog-shrouded road ahead. The trees parted briefly, and I saw them. Tire tracks in the asphalt, perfectly aligned, leading straight into the fog. Not mine, too narrow for the car, but fresh. Someone or something had been here, waiting. I drove faster, swerving through the mist, but the exit markers never ceased. Every curve, every stretch of asphalt held the same date, repeated as if drilled into the world itself. The fog now had a weight, pressing against the windshield, against my chest, making it harder to breathe. I turned the wheel sharply, forcing the car onto a shoulder that ended abruptly at a drop-off. Headlights caught a glimpse of a cabin, or maybe just a silhouette, in the trees ahead. I swore I saw a figure standing at the threshold, head tilted slightly, watching. I pressed the horn. Nothing. No response. Only the fog and the repetitive markers. March 14th, 2027. My chest burned. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something there, but the road was empty, except for the faint glow of another sign, half hidden in the mist, rising above the treeline. Your turning point. A chill ran down my spine. My hands left the wheel for a moment, hovering over the gearshift. The date on the sign, the time on the phone, the markers along the road, they were not random. They were instructions. A countdown, a warning, or a summons. I could not tell which. The car inched forward, every instinct screaming to stop, to flee, but the fog seemed to congeal behind me, pushing, guiding. The figure at the cabin doorway had vanished, yet I felt its gaze travel with me. My breath came in ragged bursts, echoing in the empty car. The next sign loomed impossibly close. I braced for it. It did not list a date this time. Only a single word. Already. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, fog billowing around the car like smoke. I tried to turn, to reverse, but the road had vanished. Only the markers remained, receding into the mist, each one still bearing the date. March 14th, 2027. The tapping returned at the window, insistent now, urgent. I looked up. The road stretched into nothingness, the fog complete. And then I understood, with a sinking clarity that made my stomach twist. The date had never been ahead of me. It had always been behind, leading me here, watching me, marking me, guiding me. I pressed the horn again. The tapping matched it in rhythm. My eyes darted frantically, headlights illuminating nothing. And then I realized I had not been choosing the road. The road had been choosing me. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The final marker emerged from the fog, colossal and impossibly close. March 14th, 2027. End of the line. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the fog was gone. The road stretched normally ahead, signs listing towns I recognized. My hands were slick with sweat, the radio crackling normally, the hum of the tires regular. And yet, in the passenger seat, the phone lay open, a message waiting. See you soon.